Hello, welcome back to another fun, exciting day here in Eastern North Carolina. It's really breezy out, and I was planning on doing some tree pruning today and filming that with you guys, of course, but it's super duper breezy, and that makes it difficult to do things, especially with audio. So I can't really make a good video. Not that my videos are all that good, but I can't make a good video about trimming the trees or pruning the trees with the wind howling like it is. It's probably about like 20 miles per hour at least steady out there. That being said, what I can do is clean up my seed station, because as you can see, it's a bit of a mess. Now, if you watched last year's video, if you've been a regular subscriber, you watched last year's video, I did a whole video on setting up my seed station, talking about what I was using, etc., etc. I'll still go over some of that today, but I just wanted to point out that, well, it's become a bit of a mess. And if you haven't watched last year's video, please feel free to go back, look at those videos. You can see what I did, why I did it, etc., etc. So today I'm going to do a bit of cleanup on this. I'm going to try to make this look nice here. And I'll go over again what I'm doing in preparation, or what I'm doing differently this year from last year, and when I'll be starting my seeds. So let's get to it. You'll be seeing more of this in the upcoming spring. This is going to come up next. Okay, so what I've done so far is just a little bit of cleanup. I did some sweeping on the floor. Sadly, because I'm in my garage and throughout most of the year when the weather is nice, I keep the doors open, and occasionally a small bird flies in. Now, I thought I've been lucky up to this point to scoot all those small birds out, but in my sweeping up process I did find the skeleton of one, so sorry, Mr. Bird. I did turn around and get rid of the old reflective blanket. It was like one of those emergency, really cheap $1 emergency blankets, and I had that up to help reflect light and heat back into the space of the shelving unit. This is an uninsulated, unheated garage. Now, I am in growing zone 8A. The winters do not get that cold. All that being said, is we do have quite a few freezing nights. Nights where the temperature will drop down to freezing, usually just for a couple of hours, and then it starts to heat back up. So I had that little blanket. Now, I wasn't really thrilled with the blanket because it was so cheap and it was difficult to put up, so I got a new reflective blanket. But my measurements were wrong. I thought this blanket was going to be long enough to wrap around and provide reflection and heat back to these top three shelves. Unfortunately, it doesn't wrap all the way around. I think, though, it may be okay. Now that I'm thinking about it, I actually may readjust it. You know what? I am going to readjust it. I'm going to shimmy it so that more of the blanket comes on this side. And I'll still leave quite a bit of blanket on that side because there's a window there. And again, it's not super airtight and the garage isn't super airtight. So I do want to make sure that there's enough heat and light being reflected back onto the plants. So let me make that adjustment now. Okay, so it's a little better. Now, if you're in a colder environment or a colder growing zone, you may want to do a more enclosed system or a totally enclosed system. Unemployed hillbilly redneck, I can't remember the guy's name. If I remember, I'll leave a link below. But he's another YouTuber, he's an old guy in upstate New York, and he turned around and bought a hemp growing plant enclosure, and he has a shelving unit in there that he then puts all of his salads and everything else that he's growing inside that. And just the lights alone generate enough heat to keep that interior space, since it's fully enclosed, it has a door and everything, keep everything nice and toasty in there for the plants to germinate and do their thing. Erin from The Impatient Gardener, she has a similar-ish system to this. She also has a much more extensive system. She has many more shelves. I also have another unit off to the side here. That's this one over here. And I'll talk about that today as well. But her system is much more extensive and probably more elaborate. And I've seen a few others recently where, I mean, wall-to-wall shelving in their basements, and they have the fancy purple grow lights and such. I don't do any of that. I just have plain either fluorescents, or I have splurged and bought a few fluorescent grow lights. They put out something like 6,000 lumen, which is intensive. Anyways, so let me continue on cleaning some of this stuff up, and then we'll kind of review what I'm doing with this. I had a giant water bottle. I don't know where the giant water bottle is. Found the giant water bottle and some paper towels. Now these paper towels I'll turn around and throw into the compost heap because, well, why not? They will rot down. Now I'm just going to give as I clean up each shelf, I'm just going to give the heat mat that I have down on each shelf a wipe down. It'll also give me a chance to inspect the heat mats. These heat mats aren't built to last forever, and I don't know about you, but I'm a little rough with my heat mats, i.e. soil spills onto the heat mat, I don't wipe it up, it gets underneath the trays as you slide trays in and out, and therefore you wind up possibly ripping or tearing your heat mat, which then would short out, which then won't work. So yeah, gonna inspect the heat mats. Also, another thing, I don't know if you guys saw this last year, if I had this on film or not, but we had bought a few of these, countertop water bins, which are great, for if you need that kind of thing. But turn around and I cut a hole right here on the top and fill it up with water from the hose or the house, depending upon the weather, and pop this open, fill up a little water jug or spray bottle, and you're good to go, because I don't have a source of water here in the garage. So if I wanted to water my plants, I'd have to run in and out and in and out and in and out. So I keep a couple of these on hand. Each one of these is 2.5 gallons, so that's 4 or 5 gallons of water that I could keep here on the shelf. And every, maybe 3 or 4 days, depending upon what I'm watering, how often I'm watering, then, I just fill these up again. So repurposing, recycling. This is one of the wooden flower trays that I'm trying out this year. This one's a small one, sort of a prototype as it were. I don't know if the larger variety or the smaller variety is going to be more or less beneficial, but I'm going to try these out. I have made a bunch of different trays, and I put them up on my Etsy store. The link is below to that. That's Bad Wood Goods. So I have a bunch of seed trays up there currently. If you want more, if you want a small size like this, please let me know in the comments below. I will make some up and I'll throw them up on the Etsy store. This one, as you can see, is marked flowers only. I did that for my own heads up because this tray is not heat treated wood. It's not made of heat treated wood. So this tray may contain some chemicals, preservative chemicals for the wood. Now that's not necessarily going to harm the flowers, so I can start things like flowers in here. Flower seedlings, once the seedlings get so big, transplant them on. But I wouldn't want to grow something like lettuce in here, and then the lettuce may absorb some of those chemicals, and then eventually I eat them, and then 10 years down the road I have some sort of cancerous tumor on the side of my neck, and nobody wants that. As you can see, I also have a ton of plastic trays, and again, I'll go over that in a little bit when I get to that point. This is a wood seed tray, another wood seed tray that I made out of pallet wood. Now this pallet wood is heat treated, so theoretically it's safe to use with all your vegetables, hence the reason I wrote veg on it. This is the larger size. It is heavier, But again, with some love and care, and taking care of these things, this should last me quite a few years. And when it no longer becomes viable or usable, and the only reason it wouldn't become usable is because the water from your plantings, the moisture seeps into the wood, starts to rot the wood. Eventually, the wood becomes at a point unstable, rotted away enough, unstable that then it's just you're going to put dirt in, it'll fall out the bottom, or the sides crack off, or whatever it is. Take it, throw it on the fire, you get yourself some ash, and the ash can be used out in the garden. Here's a 1 gallon, I think it's 1 gallon, 2.7 quarts. So it's not necessarily 1 gallon, I think it's half a gallon. Either way, it's an orange juice bottle. And I'm going to use this bottle this year for comfrey fertilizer. I'll get into that later. If you want, Google comfrey fertilizer, but this is a good way, I think, of not only making the fertilizer, but also then storing the fertilizer and using it over and over and over again. Again, there's a billion videos out there on comfrey. I'll probably do another video on comfrey later in the year. I think I did a video last year, the year before. Again, go check it out. There's resources out there. C-O-M-F-R-E-Y, comfrey. Really cool thing. But either way, I'm going to reuse this bottle. And again, unless I wing this at something, because it's plastic, it should hold up for at least 10 years, if not longer.
Many hours later.
Okay, so I jumped ahead real quick, and I did a lot of the cleanup, and I didn't bring you along for the ride because, frankly, it's quite boring. And most of you already probably tuned out of this video. But I got my racks cleaned up here, and I'll go over that in a second up close. And then I got this rack system over here cleaned up. Now, this was the original rack system I had way back when I started gardening up in New York. My wife bought it for me as a birthday present so I could start seeds indoors. And it still works. It's wonderful. This year, though, I hope that things are going to be different. So if you haven't been paying attention, or if you didn't know, or if you're a first-time viewer, I am getting a greenhouse. Now that hopefully will be arriving sometime this month, maybe early March. So that's going to put a kink into my overall plans. It was supposed to have arrived, or should have been arriving next week. That won't be happening because of environmental problems up in British Columbia. They had a lot of, besides the usual snow, they had floods, they had roads get washed out, yada, yada, yada. Nobody cares. The product is going to be delayed. I'm okay with it. Act of God, can't do anything about it, so I just have to wait. But that just means that I won't be starting seeds in the greenhouse as early as I would like. So if I got the greenhouse, let's say next week, I would hope to have it complete by the first week in March, and then I could start putting seeds in there to start growing. Now, we start getting really warm, or spring arrives in March, basically. Occasionally there's some freezing nights, but for the most part, the days start hitting that 60-degree mark on a regular, consistent basis. By April, we start touching on the 70-degree days on a more consistent basis. So March, April would be the months I want to grow the seeds out in the greenhouse. Again, to protect them from the overnight freezes, because again, it does freeze for a few hours, but they would get plenty of sunlight at that point. The greenhouse would be getting warm enough. Life is good. The seeds would grow. Now that probably won't be happening, so I don't know. Again, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Hit the bell icon to be notified so that you can follow along with the greenhouse build and then see where I get to this year and see, do I start seeds in the greenhouse? I'm prattling on, and you just want to get to see what I've done so far in a close-up as opposed to this wider angle. So let me shut up and I'll show you what's going on. Okay, starting at this top shelf here, I have, and the way that I bought this unit, I believe it's 24 inches deep, and these black plastic trays are 10 by 20s. So they're 10 inches wide and they're 20 inches deep. These are 24-inch deep shelves, and I bought it, I believe this is a 4-foot wide unit, so I'm able to put 4 of these trays side by side, sorry. Now you may have noticed one of these trays is not like the other. Now let me just talk about that. These are biodegradable seed starting cells, and then over here we have terracotta pots. These worked out well for me last year. They are not the easiest piece to get plants out of once those plants start really rooting in. And there's another issue with the water, and I'll discuss that in a second. More seed starting trays, biodegradable. I think these are made out of, I don't know. I don't think they're peat. I think they're cow pots. But either way, they're there, and that's what I had left over from last year, and that's what I'm going to grow this year. Now, a quick word on water. All of these, between these seed starting cow pot things and these terracotta, they absorb water. And so when I water, I'll water from the bottom. So I'll put water down into the tray here and let these terracotta pots, or these again, these paper-like cow pots, absorb the water, and then the soil inside absorbs what the cow pots or the terracotta pots can't absorb. So essentially, instead of watering directly onto the plants, I'll be watering from underneath. I find that system works the best, at least for me. Down on the second shelf, there's the wooden seed trays that I was talking about earlier. And now next to those, I have some of these trays. Now these are meant, I believe, to go into a 10 by 20 tray. I have them sitting in this larger plastic tray, which is, I believe, like a boot tray. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One, these here have these holes in the bottom, and that lets out, some soil can escape, and of course the water will escape the tray, but excess water will then get everywhere. So I put it into the larger tray. Now the same with the wood trays here. These wood trays are not watertight. There's a big old crack there. There's cracks along the side, and that's fine. So there's another big crack. I'll probably put like paper towel at the bottom of that one when I plant it out. And that's fine because excess moisture can escape, but when it escapes, it needs to go someplace, which is the large tray you see it sitting in. Go down a tray to the third shelf here. There's a standard 10 by 20 tray. Now, a lot of my 10 by 20 trays I've been using for numerous years, and they started cracking in the corners. So they're not watertight, as it were. And what I wind up doing then is I just doubling them up instead of just throwing them out. I have so many of them, I'll double them up, and then I can put whatever I want into the 10 by 20 tray. I can either fill the whole thing with soil and then plant into that, or I could plant into smaller pots like the terracotta pots you saw and put that in there, or I even have other small plastic pots that I can do the same. Now these, right here, these metal trays are very cool. I think they are. So they're essentially galvanized trays. You get them from Gardener Supply, and they have these cells. And the cells pop out real easy. Okay? And you fill the cells up, obviously, with soil, and then you put your seeds in, and then they grow. And after a time, when you want to pull out, when the plant is large enough, it needs to be potted up. They're hollow. You pop them from the bottom, and out they come, and you can plant them on. Now, the only thing that you have to keep in mind with these trays is that there is no drainage on the bottom. You can put drainage holes on the bottom. You can drill them out yourself. If you were to do that, make sure that you put it onto a surface, like either inside a 10 by 20 tray or this larger black tray, so that the excess water from the trays drip out. I have not done that. I just am very careful about how much I water, when I water, so that there's not a lot of excess water around for the plants to, have a problem with. Now, next to that, I have those 2.5 gallon countertop water bottles that I've cut holes into the top, and I just refill with regular tap water or water from the water catchment system that I have outside. And then on the bottom, I have, only right now 3 10 by 20 trays. But do I have? Nope. I just have this mess here. So I'll probably clean up this mess, and these 10 by 20 trays will turn around and probably go in that bottom corner. Either they'll be used, or I'll just leave them for the other stuff. Now, over on this side, as you can see, here's my 3 shelves, or 2 shelves really. The top shelf is just used as storage. This top piece right here, that is a turbo cloner. I've tried using that once, didn't have too much success with it. I will give it another try this year and see what happens. And there's some more of those water bottles that I'll use, or juice bottles that I'll use for comfrey again. Now this year, again, because I'm hopeful I can start stuff out in the greenhouse, I'm just going to use this shelf here as storage. So as you can see, I have some coir blocks. I have a Hawes rose that I need to put onto one of the water buckets. This is my little watering can that I use. Apologize for the lighting, the lights coming in. So that's the little watering can I use. Now on the bottom, I probably will have a tray or two of plants that I'll put. I usually do one 10 by 20 tray here on the bottom. Has the two fluorescent lights. The lights are adjustable. And currently there is a plant which I brought in when we had a big freeze a few weeks ago, but I forgot to put it back outside. We are predicted to get more freezes, so for right now, it's getting some sunlight from the window, and it seems to be doing all right there. Okay, so last but not least, I'm going to turn around, check out my wiring. I'm going to plug in everything into my surge protector, which I did not show you, but I have a timed outlet box, as it were. What do I call those things? Like a timed surge strip, but one side is on all the time, the other side is timed. So what I like to do is put my heat mats on the one side that is on all the time, and then I put my lights on the other side that is timed. The lights are on a timer. I usually do about 12 hours, which I think is the minimum that you should do for, do I do 12 hours? Yes, I do about 12 hours. So, no, I do, I'm sorry, 14 hours. I do 14 hours of light for the seedlings. So basically from 6 in the morning, I believe, until 8 at night. So is that 14 hours? Correct me if I'm wrong down below. But 14 hours for the light. So I'm going to plug all these in right now. I'll do a quick test, make sure everything is working. If something's not working, now's the time before I start putting out my seeds to fix those problems. So let me plug that in. Ta-da! Yeah, I know. Sorry. All the lights are on now. You can see how bright it gets. Now it looks like all the lights are on. Everything's working, which is great. So there's nothing I have to do. I did turn on the heat mats, so I'm sure in a few minutes they'll be warm. I won't leave these on today because I'm not putting any seeds to start out. But when I do, I will set the timer on the timer thing. So if I find it, what I'm going to do is I'll leave a link below in the description so that you can go check it out for yourself. Maybe most of you, hopefully if you're gardening, already use such a thing. It's a great little timer strip thing that you could use to control your lights, your heating, whatever you want. That's really it for today. I've cleaned up what I needed to clean up. I still have the mess on the floor I have to go through, but I will get that done soon. The only difference is once I start operating, I'll bring a bucket over, and what I'll do is when I need to thin seeds, I will throw those thinnings into the little bucket, and eventually that bucket goes into the compost pile. If there's something wrong with a pot of soil or something, I'll toss that in the bucket. Basically, it becomes my indoor compost bin, and eventually all that goes out into the out into the compost outside. Other than that, this is pretty much what I have. I did make the minor adjustment or add-on of the heat blanket, as it were, the reflective blanket to the back, something a little more durable and better than last year. I will go up and clean up the wiring after this. I'm just going to zip tie, make everything a little neater and nicer. And that's about it. If you have your own seed starting stations, let me know. If there's any questions you have, let me know. I am by far no expert, but I can share my experiences with you guys. And if you, again, want to share anything that you've done in the past, let me know. And yeah, I'm gonna call it quits for today. So if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Give me a follow over on Instagram. Check out all those links like I mentioned below. There's links to my website, links to the book I've written. There's links to all sorts of stuff. So again, check out those links below in the description. I know it's a little difficult to do on mobile devices, but give it a whirl. You can do it. And I think that's about it. I'm going to catch you on the next one. Bye-bye.